Welcome to the podcast, fellow griever. I'm Melissa, your host, and I'm with you on this journey because my own incredible 21-year-old son, Alex, died by suicide on August 7th in 2016. My world was shattered, but slowly, bit by bit, I began the difficult journey of rebuilding a new life, just like you may be doing right now. So know that I see you, because I am you. Thank you so much for being here. It truly means more than I can say. And if you are new to the podcast, please consider listening to the introduction, Meet Me, episode number 1, which is now linked in the show notes starting in late season 6. Listen to know what to expect from the podcast, to learn more about me, and so that you will know all that I offer in my community for support, connection, and healing. If you are not a new listener and haven't listened to this Meet Me episode recently, it's updated and you may learn something new. Every week, we will continue to explore the questions that haunt us, seek the courage to uncover the healing tools within us, and offer the comfort of a community we all need so very much. Come along with me, because this is so very lonely, but we do not have to be alone. Together, let's choose to find meaning and even happiness amid the leftover pieces before us. Welcome to today's episode. Hello, fellow griever, and welcome to the leftover pieces. This is Season 6, Episode 40, and today I'm releasing a very impactful conversation that I had recently with Peyton James's dad, David. Peyton was an incredible young man who died by suicide in 2014, and while his dad will feel his absence for the rest of his life, he takes some little bit of comfort in spreading the ripple effect of Peyton's life with hope through the legacy foundation that he co-founded in his son's name, the Peyton Heart Project. You should all take a look and consider getting involved at the link below. The Peyton Heart Project makes it super easy to get involved, and the ripple effect you could create is immense. So today, among other things, David and I discuss stigma, mental health in schools, organ donorship, and ultimately how dad's grief matters deeply. It matters deeply. And yet often dads feel forgotten or like they have nowhere to turn to find support meant just for them. We also discussed how suicide loss is different. This dad has definitely leaned into his pain to find this purpose. And this episode is one that I think everybody is going to take something from. A little bit about him. First and foremost, like I said, David is Peyton's father. Peyton is the namesake of the foundation, the Peyton Heart Project. Peyton James died after losing his battle to mental illness in 2014 when he died by suicide. David set out to raise awareness of mental health issues and suicide so that other families wouldn't feel the pain of losing a loved one to suicide. Knowing that education is the key to prevention, he has lobbied for laws in his home state of Texas that require educators to be trained yearly in suicide awareness. He also speaks at various events using Peyton's story to help others. He currently resides in Texas Hill Country with his wife, Lisa, daughter, Emmalee, and 2 corgis, Earl and Zelda. Let's welcome David to the podcast today. Hi, David. Welcome to the podcast. It is my pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I would like to start and ask you if you would honor us by sharing a little bit of your lost story.
All right. In 2014, I was working as an English teacher and swim coach at College Park High School in the Woodlands, Texas. And my day would usually begin about 5 in the morning. I'd have to go to the school, pick up the bus, drive it to the natatorium, run practice, bring the kids back to the school, teach all day, and then take another group over in the afternoon, another practice, then bring the bus back, make sure I had everything ready to go for my class the next day. Then I could actually go home. So I was 12-hour days were not uncommon for me. That particular day was October 8th, 2014. I'd come back to the school. I was working in my room, trying to get everything ready to go. And it was typical Houston October. It could be beautiful one day and, Noah's Ark preparation next. And it was storming. Thunder, lightning, heavy rain, everything else. And it was bad enough that the football team had actually canceled practice and gone home, which in Texas, where football is a religion, they'll stay, they'll practice no matter what, but you can only accomplish so much in a gym. So by the time I was ready to leave, I walked out the back door by the athletic wing of the school, and my truck was the only vehicle left in the coach's lot. I stood under the overhang waiting for the rain to stop, and it just kept going and going. If anything, it got heavier. So I finally just threw everything over my shoulder and started running, and I'm hitting the unlock on my key fob. I get to my truck, I throw everything in the front seat, I jump in, I'm soaking wet, and my phone rings. And I'm trying to catch my breath, listen to rain pound down, and I saw it was Peyton's mother, my son Peyton's mother. And I answered the phone, and all she said was, "David, you need to talk to this officer." Now, they lived about 150, 160 miles away. They were living in Georgetown, Texas at the time. We lived out in the Woodlands area. So it's Houston to Austin, basically.
Okay.
And the guy came on, said he was with the Georgetown, Texas Police Department, and said, "Peyton James has hung himself." And that's all he said. And he hands the phone off, and I believe it was to a nurse. At this point, I don't even remember. I just remember talking to somebody. She identified herself and basically told me that Peyton was at Seton Medical Center in Round Rock, Texas, that he was in critical condition, and I needed to get there as soon as possible. And I'm trying to get more details. They don't have them. They're not giving me the information. Like I said, it's all kind of a blur. And I clicked off the phone, and just from somewhere deep inside of me, a guttural scream came out. And I was screaming, I'm yelling, I'm beating on the steering wheel, I'm punching the roof of the cab. I got tears streaming down my face, snot running out my nose. I just remember screaming, why, over and over again. Fortunately, I was able to collect myself, and I called my wife, and we were lucky. Normally she worked in the Galleria, which is, 40 something miles away. That particular day, she was working from home. So she was, only 5 miles away. She was able to come and get me. We left my truck in the parking lot, and we went and picked up my daughter at daycare, and we knew we had to get to Austin. We knew we had to make that trip, but we had to find somebody to, take care of my stepson. He couldn't, because we didn't want him missing school and everything else. We had to pack. We had no place to stay because Austin was in the middle of the Austin City Limits Music Festival. And all the hotel rooms, even the cheap ones, were triple, quadruple in price. We figured we'll figure it out when we get there. I did have a friend that lived on the outskirts of Austin. We could have always stayed there, but we started driving. And as we were about halfway there, storming, everything else, just terrible weather, we got a call, and it was Jackie, is Peyton's mom, Jackie's sister, telling us that Peyton was being life flighted or star flight or whatever it is from Round Rock to Dell Children's Medical Center in Austin. And I know enough to know that they're life flighting. If they're putting him on a helicopter to transport him, it's serious. We finally got there. It was late at night, found the pediatric intensive care unit, and he was like in the second to last room down the hall. And we get in there, and there is this vibrant, active, full of energy kid laying there, hooked up to all sorts of machines and tubes and wires and monitors and everything else. And he had a breathing tube in. They were monitoring brainwaves, everything else. His body was spasming from time to time. And I mean, it was just, I don't even know how to begin to describe what you feel when you're hoping for the best and you see the worst. Yeah. The doctor came in, took my wife, Lisa, and I into a separate room and basically started laying out the scenario. He had, He had, after he hanged himself, his mother got him down, started CPR, called 911. The EMS came and they managed to get his heart started, but he wasn't breathing on his own. And she basically told us that if he survives, and that's what killed me, was if, there's a chance for brain damage, organ damage, all the things that come from the lack of oxygen. So they told us the next 72 hours would be critical. About 36 hours later, we found out that they came in, they do the little test every hour to check it, and they noticed that he wasn't reacting. And the nurse came in, did the test. He went out, got the doctor. Doctor comes in, or then they do the doctor huddle. They get several doctors in there. They decide, okay, we're going to need to do a CAT scan. They load him up, they wheel him out, they take the CAT scan, came back and called us once again over to that little room and showed us the side-by-side scans of his brain. They showed us the CAT scan they had done when he'd been admitted, and they showed us the current one. And so basically, his brain is dying, and there's nothing we can do. Basically, it's just, we're going to sit there and wait for him to die. And that was the worst thing I'd ever heard. And we spent the next, day and a half or so just basically sitting by his side and talking to him, everything else, waiting for him to die, for them to make the declaration. So a little after midnight on October 13th, 2014, Peyton was declared brain dead. They, kept him on machines because we had made the decision to donate his organs. And that was that. My son, my beautiful son, who struggled when he was born, he was in the NICU for a month, who fought to stay alive, lost his battle with staying alive, with mental health issues and bullying and everything else. And he was gone. And ever since that day, there's not a day that goes by that I don't remember him, that I don't think of him. There are days where I just break down and cry, but I will not let his story go untold. If I can save one person by sharing his story, then I'm going to do it. If I can do anything to change the perception of mental health issues in our country, in our state, in our town, I'm going to do it. His death is not going to be in vain.
Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that. I know firsthand that just because we're able to get it out doesn't mean it's ever easy to do. And so thank you for sharing that. Hearing you talk about him on life support, I can only imagine how difficult that was to be a part of. And I'm just so sorry. That guttural scream that came from you has only happened for me once in my life. And yeah, you don't know where it comes from. I feel my youngest son came home and told me. And because he was afraid I was going to hear some other way, he got a phone call. We didn't get the police knock on the door like a lot of people get. But instead, my youngest son got a call. And then he figured out how to try to get home before mom found out some other way. And that spot on the carpet where my son told me that's where that scream came out. And it always felt like it was as if somebody had burned a hole in the earth right there for me, right? Part of the reason we probably left that house was because I couldn't get past that space of where the worst thing that could ever happen to a parent happens. And I didn't scream why. I remember screaming no. And I remember my husband, who's not my father, my children's father either. I remember my husband, I didn't know it at the time, but I do remember him asking Parker several questions. And then he left the room. I was with Parker, but unbeknownst to me, he was trying to call Alex because he thought it was some sort of a bad joke.
Oh, yeah,
so he kept thinking, could this be a joke?
Yeah, my truck stayed in the coach's parking lot for a week and a half because we were up in Austin. And I just remember the day that we went to get it and sitting there again, where I just received the worst news of my life and shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Just I there was a mega church next to the school where I work. So I backed out of the parking lot, drove over to the church, and just went and sat at the prayer fountain for probably an hour just to be able to compose myself for a 5-mile drive home.
Yeah. Just from getting back into your truck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for the longest time, I couldn't even go in his room because everything in it. It's where he stayed when he was with us, and he didn't have a lot there, but just the little things that meant a lot to him. And to see those and have to walk past it every time I went upstairs, it was difficult.
Yeah. So I if you don't mind, I want to ask you if you will go backwards just a little bit to discuss, because now we know what happened, but the lead up to what happened, like the why, if you will. And I know we never,
Okay.
it's one of the worst things about suicide loss is the why, right? The guilt, the
Yeah.
what did I miss? How did this happen? How did we not know? Why didn't they ask? All the things. But going back with Peyton a little bit, would you talk about the why, what you know of that led him to that place?
Well, and he was in like kindergarten. He was diagnosed with ADHD. And we had started him on, we used to actually have to put the patches on his backside for his medicine and everything. As he got older, he was able to take actual pills and everything. And it helped. I mean, but he he had been born a month and almost 2 months premature. And so he was always small for his age. And usually the smallest kid in his class. And he had glowing red hair and freckles and big old jug ears. And when he started kindergarten, he actually had to wear glasses. Just all the things that kids can find to pick on you about, he had.
Mm.
His
Things that
permanent
make moms and parents smile, because it's, I mean, to me, just sounds, I mean, I've seen his pictures. He's just an absolutely precious little boy and a gorgeous young man. And yet kids are so mean.
yeah. And as he got older, they started to pick on him, and they found out too that he had a bit of a temper, and they could set him off. And they just poked the bear until they could get him to go off. When he was in, I guess, right before fifth grade, he and his mom moved from the Houston area to the Austin area. She had lost both her parents, and she wanted to be closer to family. So we worked it out where we worked on our visitation schedule and everything, and they moved off. And the school he was at, there was, just that one kid that made it his mission in life to make Peyton's life miserable. And it basically took the threat of legal action to get the school to do anything. So my excuse me, my wife is an attorney, and basically they said, look, Peyton's stepmom is an attorney. She's getting involved if you don't do something. And all of a sudden the school had no problem getting involved. They moved from that area to they stayed in the same district but moved to a different area of the district when he started middle school. And same thing, the kids, little things that they could do to pick on them and make them feel different than just being jerks. There's a reason they lock middle schoolers away in their own building for 3 years.
Right.
And she, after his seventh grade year, she took a job at in Georgetown. They moved to that area. And by this time, he had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And what had led up to it is he would say, oh, I should just kill myself. And of course, he usually said that when he was getting in trouble. And we thought it was just deflection for way to steer the conversation away from you did this and you shouldn't have to, oh, no, don't. Have kids that age, they're really good at deflecting and trying to change the focus of the conversation. Well, he kept doing it. And his mom told him, if you do it again, we're going to taking you to the hospital. And he did it. She loaded him in the car, drove him to the emergency room. And they said, well, we don't have cause to keep him, but we started him in therapy. They started him on medication. They were trying to balance it out. And just that one day in October, he came home from school. He'd had a rough day, and just that perfect storm. He went into his room and put one end of his belt around a ceiling fan, the other around his neck. And I can't imagine the horror his mother went through when she found him. But she was, like I said, she was able to get him down. She called 911. She started CPR. EMS showed up. They got his heart beating, but just didn't. The end result was not what we had wanted. So it just, you beat yourself up with the would have, could have, and should have. All the things you kept thinking that I should have done this if I'd only done this. But, like they used to say, if some buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
Right.
And in retrospect, there's still times where I think, oh, if I had just done this, if I had just done this. And it could be I could be sitting somewhere reading a book, watching a movie, and just something clicks in your head and like, oh, if I had done this. And it's frustrating because you can't change what's happened, but you're constantly stuck with the reminders of what happened because you didn't.
Right. I mean, it's one of the greatest complications of suicide loss, because it probably is the greatest complication, is the things we'll never know, and the reckoning with. I feel like at this point, I've reckoned with most of the guilt that I can. I don't know how a parent gets rid of every stitch of their guilt of anything, like guilt in general goes with parenthood, right? And like you said that, and I thought, oh my gosh, again, this is why we're going to talk about support in a minute. Talking with other people that have been through it is so powerful, whether you're talking parent to parent, sibling to sibling, sometimes even just lost survivor to lost survivor. But the more niche down you can get, the more relevant your experience is. And to hear you say out of nowhere, those thoughts can still come, even though I feel like I've done all this work and I've got all these tools and I've done the best that I can to this point, I will still have those things occur to me, David. I will still sometimes think. I remember a couple of years ago was the first time out of nowhere I hung my head and thought, oh my gosh, it was the concussions. Like, why was I not more aware? Because he was an athlete. So he had one concussion in football and he'd had two in baseball. And the final one that he actually took a baseball to the temple.
Ooh.
And he took a 90-mile-an-hour ball to the head as the pitcher. And there was blood coming out of his ear. And that's what she was preparing me for, was that they didn't know. And so took that drive. And the only thing my kid cared about when I saw him in the emergency room was if they made the out, because the ball deflected off of his head to the first base and they made the out. So that was all Alex cared about. But he nonetheless had a fairly, and they were lucky where it hit. If it hit in a different spot, he might have had some serious problems. But it was still a serious concussion. 3. That was his third. And I remember saying that at that time, son, this is it. If you get another hit to the head, you're done. I'm set. And we were the team that was doing, like lots of sports families do, club ball in the off seasons, as well as, which leads us to talk about how much pressure our kids are under in today's world, right? But that would have been a big deal to tell him he couldn't play anymore, especially as I think he was a junior at the time. And he would have been able to play college ball. He chose not to. My younger son did choose to play in college, but quit after a year because he couldn't do it without his brother on this earth anymore. But I remember thinking to myself, why did nobody talk to me? Why did no doctor say, this is his third concussion? We need to be aware of not only the next 24, 48 hours, but we need to think about things that could occur in his personality in the years to come. Things that could be a trigger, right? Things that could be is this a TBI? Are we looking at CTE? All these things were never even addressed. It was never on my radar. And I had one of those moments you talked about just a few years ago where I felt that guilt come back in of, so nobody told me, but you only know when you know it. And we were barely starting to even talk about that stuff then. This was probably 2012 when this happened. And so we weren't talking about that, especially not on a high school level. Now, I don't know if they do, but they should be. I mean, these are things that come to mind as a parent who's lost a child. suddenly the strangest thing can come out. Or when he came home for 5 weeks, it was summer, came home from college. And I remember there's times I'll think, David, why when he was home didn't I question this or that? And it's things I haven't thought about for years, things I didn't think about at the time. So it's this thing that keeps on punching over the years. Even when you think you've reckoned with everything, the smallest little thing will come up. And yeah, and Alex was not bullied, but he was a bully's advocate. He was that rare kid that would step in. And I had several kids come to me after he died that would say, if it weren't for Alex, I don't know if I'd be here, because I
Yeah.
was bullied so badly. And he came to my side and stopped it, because he had the clout, the popularity, the whatever you want to call it, and the unique personality that would allow him to not, he just didn't care. He didn't care if people liked him, and yet they liked him despite that. And he had several friends in those circles that they kind of looked at him as the angel on their shoulder, because he just wouldn't tolerate injustices. And that was kind of his undoing. There was injustices going on in his fraternity and places, and it was beyond his capability to deal with alone. And he was shouldering the mental burden of it, unbeknownst to me at the time. But yeah, these kids that have these big hearts, I'd love you to tell me a little bit more about Peyton, because it sounds like he loved to entertain people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a born entertainer. When he was little, we'd go to the mall or something. He'd climb up on one of the fountains and start singing. He wanted to be the next. This was when American Idol was in its first couple of seasons. He loved it. And he wanted to be an American Idol. So he would get up on the little fountain or whatever and start singing, just any place where he could have a stage. When he was in kindergarten, he played the big bad wolf in his school play. And in my honest opinion, he stole the show. Just that personality. He was so comfortable on the stage. Whereas you expect kids at that age to be very wooden and not, he was animated. He was very into it. Yes, always wanted to be an entertainer. As he got older, he wanted to be a YouTube star.
Before his time.
Yeah.
That was early for.
Yeah, that was back when it was relatively in its infancy. And he actually started a YouTube channel, and he's got a couple of videos posted on it, but then we lost him. And there are times where I'll go and watch those videos or I'll call his mom and say, I'm going to call. I just want to hear his voice on her message.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all I have left. There's pictures all over the house. He's my lock screen on my phone, my watch, but 10 years. Yeah, it's been 10 years. Sometimes I just want to hear his voice. I'll sit there and talk to him when I'm driving, when I'm stuck in traffic, if I get up early in the morning, sometimes I'll go sit outside. We're in what they call a dark sky community. So there's no street lights. So I can go out there and I can sit in the backyard and I can look up and I can see all the stars. And we have some pretty good conversations.
Yeah. That's important. I think sometimes people think, and this is important, especially if you're not a parent listening, there are people that think, I wonder when they're going to get over it. I wonder when they're going to move on. I wonder when they're going to quit. I've heard it all. I'm sure you have too. And even if we don't hear it about ourselves, we hear them say it about other people. And I always tell people, you learn to move forward with this. You don't ever move on, because I've had to challenge people, and I try not to, but I have had to challenge people before and say, when do you think you would get over your child if they were gone? Like, when would you be able to move on? You don't move on from your child.
Yeah, a couple of the groups I've been in, we always talk about, you don't get over it. It never gets easier. You learn to live with it.
Yep.
For so many, that first year is just a fog. You don't remember anything. You're just going through the motions, sleepwalking through life. That second year is just brutal.
It is brutal.
Because the fog is lifted and then that pain rolls in.
I know. I tell people it's like the second year, it's like they ripped the bandage off, and that bandage was the fog, and suddenly your nerve endings are exposed. And holy heck, I mean, people talk about, I've been prepared. The first year is bad, but the second year is worse. And I always say, I'm not sure it's any worse. Nothing's worse than when they died. However, it's more brutal, it's more raw because you're not protected anymore. Your body is starting to let it in. It's starting to process the permanence because holy heck,
Yeah.
that starts to sit in that second year. They're not coming back. And not that we ever didn't know in our mind that first year, but there's a part of us that just keeps expecting the door to open. Every morning you wake up, you expect that this is just going to be some nightmare. It's first of mind that first year. Probably for me, even into the second and third year, it was the first thought and the last thought. It was the first thought every morning and the last thought every night. Eventually that dissipates and it's definitely not. I mean, I know that I can say this to another parent. It's not like I'm ever going to go through a day where it's not among my first thoughts, but it no longer is the very first thing that's on my mind anymore. It's there in the morning. It's there pretty quickly because all of my kids are there in my mind pretty quickly. That's the thing is our immediate family, our children, our spouse, they're going to be front of mind, period. So the loss of Alex doesn't ever miss me. Like I've heard friends say, I can sometimes go a whole week now without thinking of Alex, or I've gone quite a while without, and then he'll pop into my mind. And I don't know about you because it's a double-edged sword. I'm not really jealous because I don't want to not think about my child, but there was that moment when one of his friends said that to me that I thought, oh, wow. I wonder what that would feel like to just not have this pain anywhere near me for a week, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not that I want that, but it was that idea that it was the first time that I did really wrap my head around as parents, we will never have that be a part of our experience because I mean, I think about my other children all the time too. So it's just different when you now have to think about one that's no longer alive. And what I was thinking of when you were saying screensavers and photos and things like that's what sometimes makes people go, she still has Alex as her screensaver. Do you think that upsets her other children or whatever? I've had people think that I focus too much on Alex because I do the podcast and the work that I don't focus on Alex any more than I would have in my mind than I probably would have if he was alive. I focus on my other children too. I have a whole life besides what I do here. But like you, Alex's life isn't going to be forgotten and be for nothing. And he no longer is here to do that. My other children are still living their lives. I can still pick up the phone and call them. I can still spend time with them. They get to grow old and create their own legacy and leave their own memories. And I hopefully die long before they do. That isn't the case with Alex. So all of the memories I've made, like all the memories you've had with Peyton. And so
Yeah.
why would we not have those photos around? That's all we get. I get Parker in person. I get Lauren in person. The photos are because that's what I have left, right? I mean, you have one other child
I have a daughter who is basically on the other side of the wall from me
and a
right now,
stepchild.
and a stepson.
Hmm. And you get to
And
see them.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like I said, every morning I get up and I've got a routine. I work from home. I go and I'll have my coffee. I'll clock in, and I'll make sure she is up and moving because she's now a teenager. So you got to check on her, make sure she's doing what she's supposed to be doing so she can get the bus and everything else. And I'll come into my office and Peyton's picture is sitting right here. But I may spend a couple of minutes just thinking about him. What do I need to do, et cetera. And then I'll check my emails for work and everything. And then I'll start looking at other stuff, start thinking about what do I need to do? What can I do today that's going to help somebody?
Right. Exactly. So that brings me to want to talk about advocacy in general and how that was how that manifested in your heart as far as I feel like a lot of most grieving parents on some level either find that they're drawn to advocacy or they're drawn to, like, I've been drawn to supporting grievers after loss. I can't explain why. It's
Yeah.
just where I was drawn. But you have very much put yourself in the arena of helping the other space the other thing I wanted to bring up was the father support group. I knew I would get there by talking,
Yeah.
David, was so I either want to talk about fathers and support and how little there is to be found, but also how hard it is to, I'll just use the word drag dads to places, whether it's online or in person, to actually receive that support. So I want to talk about father support. You choose which way we go first.
Okay. Yeah. This was 2014. And after we lost Peyton, I knew I couldn't get through it on my own. And you post to Facebook, you say, is there something out there that locally that can help? And we were recommended to a support group for parents that had lost children. And my wife and I went to our first meeting, and there's everybody sitting around this table, and you introduce yourself and you say your child's name and how old they were when you lost them and how they passed. And we're going around the table in car accident. They lost their child to cancer. We lost our child to an accidental overdose. And they got to us, and I said, we lost my 13-year-old son, Peyton, to suicide. And the air was sucked out of the room. And just everybody's looking at us like, you suck as parents. How could you? And just felt so judged by that entire group. And we stayed until the end, and then we left, and we never went back. And fortunately, there was another teacher in the school, in the district I was working in, who had lost her son. And she reached out to me and said, look, I am part of a survivors of suicide group that meets locally. And everybody in there has lost someone to suicide. So we went to that, and it was just so incredibly welcoming. Mm-hmm. And it's just everybody in there, whether there were people that had been 5-10 years since they had lost somebody, there was people like us who had just been a couple of months. But to be able to go in there and not feel judged, because everybody in there can relate to you in some way. That's when I realized there needs to be understanding. There's the stigma behind suicide at that time was so daunting. And to do something to take away the stigma so that people can feel comfortable sharing their stories. I was interviewed by the local news, and the reporter that came out was talking to us, and he told me that aunt and uncle lost a child and everything. They'd go over to the house, and there's his picture, and they'd say, who's that? We don't talk about that. And I was just amazed that how could you not? Well, we don't want to upset people. I actually went to the head of counseling in the district I was working in, and we sat down, we were meeting, and I told her, let's go into the school. Let's talk to these kids. Let's raise awareness. We'd like to, but that might upset some of the parents. But you want a parent upset, let them lose a child to suicide and see how they feel.
Right. I'm willing to risk upsetting parents to save their child's life.
But that was the approach they took. That was the way they looked at things.
Mm-hmm. Because if we talk about that, we could encourage other children to in their life. And we know that's just not true. The statistics show what kids need is a safe place to be able to talk about the fact that they're feeling suicidal. And they need adults and peers that will meet them at that space and say, it's okay. Let's talk about it. This isn't that abnormal of a thought. But on all the things we could talk about, but the schools just go, it's the whole, not my backyard, the whole, it won't happen in our backyard if we just don't talk about it. Just if we don't, and it takes me back to a place when I was growing up. I graduated in 1987. When we were in high school, the big thing was MAD became a thing. And why it became a thing? Because moms honestly said something's got to change. We were losing people in our age group to drunk driving more than anything else at the time, because let's face it, more kids were driving than used to and all the things. And so they took that on and changed ideas and thoughts, and it was not popular at the time. And so it's that same mentality that keeps schools from being willing to proactively address mental health and suicide and suicidal ideation and all of the things. And at some point we've got to, that's why you and I are standing on platforms yelling. There's got to be enough of us at some point to shake the tree to say, if we don't talk about it and we don't arm them, we're going to keep losing them.
Yeah. So I spent 30 years as a teacher here in Texas. And my second year of teaching, they had a student at the high school I was at take his life. They came in the next day before school, and it was like Stalin's Russia. They removed every trace of that kid from the school. They went in to his locker, took out everything. If he had decorations and stickers, where everything came out of that locker. They went into every one of his classrooms, and they found every paper that was supposed to be handed back or turned in or whatever. Took all that. They went into his English teacher's room, took his journal, took everything they could. And this was back in the days before email. So we get there, we get the announcement, go check your box. There's a note in there for you. And it was basically, do not say a thing. If a student brings something up, send them to the counselors. And the joke at our school was, what are they going to do? Change the schedule?
Right.
Because our counselor, yes, there are some good counselors out there. And just like any other profession, there are some bad ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some that their solution to everything was change their schedule. And that's kind of what we were dealing with there. What are we supposed to do? These kids want answers. They just lost somebody. They may not even know the kid, but now they realize that they're on a tenuous, slippery slope and they want answers. They want to know. And they just stigmatize it into next year. It was ridiculous.
Well, we come from a lot of unhealthy thought patterns in general. And I think back to being in school, and I think it was probably, I'd have to look back at the year, but it was the 80s. It was probably junior high, if not early high school, when the space shuttle blew up and we were all watching it on TV. And everybody watched people be decimated. And yet they just sent you on to your next class. There was no talk about it. We brush off the uncomfortable stuff. We don't hit it head on. And luckily, the younger generations are more emotionally fluent than we are. However, it's not where it needs to be yet. We're still not there because I've been in those spaces where the room is sucked dry of oxygen. I recently had a conversation with somebody that isn't in the suicide loss world, but they are in the space of supporting bereaved parents. And I now host retreats here in Puerto Rico for bereaved moms of suicide loss. And this gentleman and his wife that I have brought in to be co-hosts, and this man said, do you think that you would consider opening the next retreat to mothers in general that have lost a child? And I said, I'm going to say something really hard to you, but to hear you say it, I know it's a reality. I said, I still will screen and talk to every mother who wants to sign up because one, it's not a space to commingle parents that have maybe lost a baby or have lost a pregnancy. I think that's its own space. I think those moms need to grieve together. You could be in a very different vulnerable space if you were with moms that had lost older children and had gotten to spend time with that child. So just knowing what I know about grief in general as a trained grief coach and all those things, I'm like, I already will tell you that's its own space. I said, but the other thing I'm going to tell you is this is not something you're probably aware of, but parents that get into spaces with parents who have lost children other ways oftentimes are treated like we represent to them. And I saw this shock on his face. And I said, I said, it's not logical. I'm not telling you it's logical. I'm just telling you it's what happens. I said, oftentimes other parents look at us as, yeah, but my child didn't choose to leave and yours did. And so they have this, like you said, like feeling about us, about what caused that child to end their life. It has to be something inside that family. And it's just sheer ignorance. At the pure definition of the word, it's ignorance, thankfully, that they don't understand. But the reality is most of us didn't necessarily understand before we were in this world either, that suicide is not usually as much of a choice as it is about wanting the pain to stop, not about them wanting to die.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. And until we spend enough time educating the greater world, I have a post that goes up regularly. And the reason it goes up all the time is because it has to be seen over and over again, which is suicide is not mostly about wanting to die. It's not. And
It's
most
about
of the
wanting
people
to end the
outside
pain.
of this, yeah, people outside the suicide world think it's just about them choosing to die. We're going to talk about it. And I don't know that you and I can come up with a solution here today, but I want to say that we're seeing things get better, but I'm going to tell you my feeling and I want to know yours. It's not getting better in increments that are big enough, fast enough. Yes, it's getting bigger, but the needle should be moved so much farther than it seems like it is.
Yeah. Like I said, I retired from teaching and I now work as a prevention specialist for a nonprofit here. And I go into schools and I do prevention curriculum. And one of the things that I do is I do fentanyl awareness presentations.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, fentanyl is a scourge in our country. There's last year alone, over 100,000 Americans died as a result of overdoses, or basically they've redefined it here in Texas. It's poisoning
Mm-hmm.
because so many were taking something that they didn't realize they were taking, and it killed them. 70,000 people alone as a result of synthetic opioids.
Mm-hmm.
And they're passing laws that we have to have these presentations and every student has to receive it. It's like, yes, it is bad. It is terrible. No, they didn't know that they were taking. They thought they were taking a Percocet, and it was actually a fake pill that came across the border in the back of somebody's van or something. There's so much attention paid to something like that, yet we still do almost nothing for suicide, for mental health issues. And that's where the problem lies. I mean, shortly after Peyton passed, I was I read about some laws in other states where teachers had to have yearly training on recognizing mental health issues and everything else. So I started contacting all my state reps and the education committee and everything here in Texas. And I was invited to come to the Capitol and join in with a couple of other parents that were lobbying. And the law passed, and I was like, this is great. Now there's going to be something. And the next year, I'm sitting in a faculty meeting, and we were told that this is going to be where the counselor is going to come in and talk about, what we need to do. And I'm back with the other coaches, and she gets up there. She goes, "Oh, I know we had to do this last year, but state law now says we have to do it again because we had lost a child to suicide over Christmas break." They had the little her reading a pamphlet, basically, was what it was. And when she said that, I started to get up and I felt a hand on my shoulder. And they pushed me down, and all I hear is, "Don't." It's just one of the other coaches basically saving me from myself. But as soon as that meeting was over, I went up to my classroom and I was on the verge of losing it. And fortunately, a couple of the other teachers came in. They're like, "You go to the coach's office, you go to your car, you scream, you yell, or whatever. We will cover your class until it's time for until you're able to come back."
Yeah.
But that's the way it was dealt with. This lady had to know I was in there.
Yeah.
And yet she made that statement. It was an imposition to her to have to lead this conversation. It might actually help somebody.
Right. So in circling back a little bit to the help piece, you and your wife, Lisa, found that there was the most support with other suicide loss survivors. Have you gone
Yeah.
on to continue to be a part of that? Because I promise you there's other dads listening, and to be a dad in loss has to be extra burdensome and extra lonely at times. Speak to how dads start to find spaces and why it's important, how it changed your life to find a space where you could relate just dad to dad with some other dads, and tell me the impact of that.
Basically, fathers need to know that they matter too. We're under the stereotype that we have to be strong, we have to be brave, you have to grieve, you have to scream, you have to yell, you have to cry. And the group that I went to, most of the other men in there had lost a spouse or a brother or sister. There weren't a lot of fathers in there. And to keep it all inside, to feel like you have to be strong, you have to be brave, that's not the way to do it. I was lucky. I found a group on Facebook, of all places. And there's a couple. One was Dads with Angels. And what I love is that one is so judgment free. There's people that lost little kids, young children to cancer or whatever, but I've never felt judged in any of the posts that I've made on there. And there's a couple others out there that are basically fathers who have lost children, whether it's a suicide or something else. And I've never met any of these people in person, but we're able to share on there. And maybe the anonymity of social media has allowed that, where they're able to share and not feel judged. And it might be somebody with a 3-word response telling you it's okay. But that helps so much, just knowing that there's others out there that have been through this and that are willing to just share their stories. And these are people from throughout the country, throughout the world that are out there doing this. And I think that's the key right there is you've got to be able to share. You've got to be able to tell somebody, talk to somebody.
You do.
And
You have to have that common place of shared experience to feel, because this is so lonely, to feel like you're not alone in it. And I'm gonna say something that it's an idea that I want people to take away, especially dads that are listening. You can be the provider and the strong. I'm putting that in air quotes because I don't even know what that means anymore. But we can be the strong person for our family. We can be there for our wives as husbands, and you're a griever and you deserve space to have that seen. So it's this idea in our world that we have either or propositions. You either are the strong provider for your family, or you're some sort of a mess who can't handle this and you're, falling apart because you're your child. And so you can be both. You can be both.
yeah,
And society doesn't give us the breadth to do that. And so there is this very sacred space that men really need, fathers need, brothers need, to be able to come together and grieve. And I think that it can happen. I just think it's going to require a lot more putting it out there in front of people, more people like you, more dads that are willing to say, I'm a dad and my grief is just as bad as everybody
yeah,
else's. I'm really thankful that you were willing to come on and do just that, to talk about it and say, dads grieve too. And it's just as important as mom's grief. That was your child, that was your baby, the same as it was mom's. And I'm so glad that you're willing to talk about it. I'm so glad that you're willing to advocate for it. I'm curious to know, and it has to do with earlier on in our conversation, you said something through your loss, Peyton was able to grant life or quality of life to others from organ donation. And I know lots of
yeah,
parents, I've known quite a few parents that have had that same experience. It doesn't lighten their loss, and yet it covers it with a little bit of hope. Have you ever connected with any of those people or had an option to? I'm wondering if that is a part of your journey and whether you feel like organ donation was a positive experience in the worst thing that could have ever happened.
yeah. We actually have met one of the kidney recipients.
Okay.
His daughter found us on social media. They live in the Corpus Christi area.
Okay.
So we actually made plans. We all met at a Corpus Christi Hooks game. The Hooks are Houston Astros AA affiliate down in Corpus Christi. And I was actually able to meet him. And his story was incredible. He'd been on dialysis for 6 years. He was ready to give up. He was so sick of dialysis and not being able to live his life and everything. And he got the call, and he and his daughter drove from Corpus to San Antonio for the transplant. And they wheeled him in, and I guess they have to wait for the kidney to start functioning to see how it is. And so normally it could take up to 4 hours. And that kidney, Peyton's kidney and him started functioning within 30 minutes. And they said it couldn't have been a better match if it had come from his twin brother. So he said he and Peyton are brothers now. So now I have a son that's 10 years older than me and Hispanic. So,
Thanks for being willing to share that. And the thing I want you to wrap up with, I want you to talk about I know you do other work in advocacy for prevention and other things in the work that you're doing now for the nonprofit, but speak about the nonprofit that you're a co-founder for, that Peyton's namesake, the Peyton Heart Project. I think that's a really good way for us to wrap this conversation up today, is talking about Peyton Heart Project.
okay. Originally, when I was driving home from Peyton's funeral, we had the funeral in the Austin area. We were driving back to Houston. I was trying to think of what can I do to help others and keep his name alive, keep his memory alive. And originally it started out, I was collecting toiletries for the Ronald McDonald House in Austin. We had managed to get a room there. It's right next to Dell Children's in Austin. And when you check in, they give you a plastic bag with the hotel size soap and shampoo and all that. And I thought that was incredible because there are parents that show up with nothing but the clothes on their back. The kid is life flighted from 100 miles away to the, level one, pediatric trauma unit. And you don't have a way to go to Walgreens or CVS and get that. So I started collecting that, and it went off like gangbusters, but it just became so much having to find places to store it and everything else. They take up a lot of room when you really start to think about it. I kind of let that go by the wayside. And I was contacted online I was all over social media that summer and everything else, especially Facebook. And I was contacted by a lady named Jill Cuban. And her daughter had a nonprofit in New Jersey that collected hats and scarves and things like that for the homeless. And they wanted to do a hat drive in Peyton's honor. I agreed, and they did it. And it was, a huge success. And I thought that was great. And she contacted me again and said, look, we came up with this idea of taking these handmade hearts and leaving them where people can find them. And the whole idea being each one has a positive message attached. And if the person finds it and they're struggling, there's that sign they've been looking for. That somebody out there gives a damn that they exist. And if you're not struggling, someone it is, get it in their hands. It's something small, they can carry it with them. But for somebody going through mental health crisis or personal crisis, to know that somebody cares is probably the key. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. And she goes, and we'd like to name it the Peyton Heart Project in honor of Peyton. I was like, yeah, I'm in. I want to be part of it. And what started out in the summer of 2015 is just this, let's see where it goes. Now it's kind of taken off. The hearts have been found in all 50 states and close to 70 countries throughout the world, every continent except Antarctica. And we actually have somebody that was going to Antarctica, was at least going to take one in their coat with them. They can't leave it there, obviously, but just to say I don't want to see a penguin walking across frozen tundra with that holding a heart.
Yeah.
But it's that same thing. Whenever I go somewhere, I always have a pocket full of hearts. I'll leave them where people can find them. And it's, we now have a map on our website where people can post where they found the hearts. And, that's what I was doing right before I got online with you. I had about 6 entries that I had to, update and everything else. And it's really amazing to see where they are found.
Yeah, I found myself. So I'm looking at the map right now on my other monitor, and I looked, and I was curious. I wanted to see if there had been any found in Kansas City, where I'm from. And it looks like there have been 2 found in Kansas City, one very close to where I lived. I mean, it's the library that would have been the public library in the area I lived in. So it's very close. And Kansas City is a big city. But then I was curious. I thought, I'm going to see if there have been any found in Puerto Rico, and there has been one. And here's the interesting part. I don't know if you made this, if you're the one that posted this entry for this person or not, but I'm going to read it because I think that it's so impactful. It's so relevant. We're recording. It's not the end of February, and the date on this one's February 1st of 2025. San Juan Airport in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It made my day, the person wrote. At first, it's one of those things that might catch you off guard because it was hanging on the hook of a bathroom stall, but I believe it was meant for me to find. I personally have battled mental health and suicidal ideation, and it's been quite a battle for me the past 3 years. Today, I was extremely nervous to fly back to Washington, D.C., only days after the plane crash at Reagan Airport. Thank you for spreading love, light, and comfort. It's hard for me to read that a little bit but from a good standpoint, from a standpoint of it matters. And that's why I read it, because I could have picked probably anyone on this map. So to have had this be less than a few weeks ago in the town I don't live in San Juan, but I live 20 miles south of San Juan. To read that and to have you here on Zoom and to be able to say in real time with you that what you already know, but my audience doesn't, that these little acts of kindness, of saying you matter, which is the biggest mission of the Peyton Heart Project, right? Is your life matters. And to see that's what somebody took the time to write, that they not only have struggled the last 3 years with mental health issues, but they've had their own, they put SI, which means suicidal ideation. They've had their own suicidal ideation. And to have one of these, I have one in my hand right now that was given to me by a gal who makes them for your project, to realize that that could have changed the trajectory of her day, let alone her life. People think, how could something as little as a little crocheted heart matter? Right there shows you how it
Yeah.
matters.
That's one of my favorite things. Before we redesigned our website and put the map on there, people would send them into our Facebook page, and just reading the comments about how it somehow seemed to find them in their darkest moments is what makes it all worth it. I, all this past summer, my family took a vacation. We went to Charleston, South Carolina, and I scattered probably a couple of hundred of them. I always load up my backpack before we leave and everything. And I think out of that 200 or 300 I scattered, I think one showed up on the page. And so you start thinking, oh, well, what about all the others? But not everybody's going to go online and share their story and everything. But just to know that hopefully more than one found their way to somebody.
Well, that's
they
what
don't
I
have to
think is
tell us.
for every story that's out there that they've been willing to put online, we'll just say that there are hundreds that they just didn't put the story online, but it
Yeah.
mattered as much, if not more, to them. And that's the thing. Let's call it the 10%. If the 10% are putting that, look, I found it. There are people that do like rocks and things like that. Then just remember all the people that aren't, that it still mattered for. We don't have, just
Yeah.
getting that one recognition reminds us to keep going. For me, some days I too want to, I call it crawl under my desk and quit, right? Some days I want to go, it's not mattering enough. What I'm doing isn't making a difference. And it just takes reading one card or having one mom say, without your podcast, I don't know if I'd be here. And suddenly I'm like, okay, and so I've started keeping them. I've kept all those things in a box. And I now open that box regularly to remind myself that I may not always hear it, but it matters. And I say that not only to remind you, but to remind all of the parents listening and all the people listening that every act of kindness we do matters, even if we don't receive recognition for it, even if we don't know it matters because our life matters, because we matter, because other people think you matter. And I will link all the things that we've talked about in the show notes that are relevant for linking, but I want you to tell people where they can find the Peyton Heart Project, knowing that I will put the link, but I want them to hear where to find it.
Yeah, we have a Facebook and an Instagram page. It's just go in and look up Peyton Heart Project. And then we also have a website where you can find the map and you can order hearts to distribute yourself. It's the PeytonHeartProject.org. You can email us for request hearts and everything. There's a request form on there. You can just write in, ask for information about us, what we do, things like that. It's all right there for you. Our mission is to get hearts in the hands of people that want them. Mm-hmm. If you want to take part in your community, if you want us to send you 100 hearts that you can leave at the library, at the grocery store, at Target or Walmart or any place that people are likely to find them, please contact us and we'll get them to you.
Well, and I know the Peyton Heart Project, I think, if I read right, partners with Starbucks to help support it. And I bring that up because I know coffee shops, this gal that made this one and makes a lot of them and has sent them to wherever you guys send them. And I want to talk about that really briefly because there might be people that this has piqued their interest, I hope, that think, oh, I crochet. So it's the me's of the world that want to be able to have hearts that will reach out and say, how do I get hearts? And y'all can send them.
Yeah.
Or in my case, I'm going to ask this lovely lady to maybe make me some and send them directly to me. But I want you to speak to it. There's also a place on there where if you are a crafter, not only are the crocheted hearts a thing, but it looks like you can make several different types of, there's puffy hearts and that are like little stuffed things. And there's other types of Peyton hearts that you guys have kind of a template for of, if you make them, here's how you make them. Here's the knot that you put in them, things like that. So if you are someone who's crafty or does yarn craft, or cloth craft, I think mostly. There are directions on the website, correct?
Yeah, there's parameters on how to do them. There's patterns if you're a crocheter or whatever. I work together with the Hope Squad at our local high school here in Dripping Springs, and they tag them for me because not everybody has the time to sit down and attach tags to
A
1,000
tag. Yeah,
hearts.
exactly.
I've given kids have gotten service hours for doing it. If there's an organization, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, church groups, whatever, that are looking for a service project and they want to tag hearts, they can contact us and we'll work together with them.
If they go on the website, they can also see that you're very specific about the tags, right? So they need to know that's
Yeah.
a specific thing. So there's tags you can print off on there, but then there's also a way to have your own loved one's name on them. Isn't that correct? Am I misspeaking?
Yeah, you can if you, and it has to come directly from the family. I understand there are friends out there that want to honor somebody that
Right.
they
But in other
lost,
words,
but
I could reach out about ones that had to do with Alex, but my brother couldn't or whatever. Right.
yes,
Right.
yes, it has to be direct from the family. There are memorial hearts that, memorial tags that we do design for people.
Okay. Because I think there's also ones that just have like different messages. So you can kind of choose which tags you want to use, and all the parameters for the sizes and all that are on there. They have the
Yeah.
templates already done. So you can just print them, hole punch them, like you said, tie them on there. And they are great civic projects. But something like this, I know there's plenty of parents and other lost survivors, friends, cousins that want to know a way that they could make a difference. And to me, this is one. Even if you don't
Yeah.
want to make the hearts yourself, order some hearts, go to Peyton Heart Project, get some hearts ordered, and start putting these out in your community.
Yeah.
Start putting them out in places that you want to spread the message of hope and that your life matters, because we just need more of that, especially in today's world. We need more of that.
And we also have them in multiple languages as well. If you go to our website, there's Spanish, French, German, Italian, Russian, and some others that people have created for us. I'm looking now at the European tags in Netherlands, North, Polish, Portuguese, Turkish, Vietnamese. There's so many people have volunteered to translate them for us.
Well, I was going to say, and I'm guessing if there's a need that you don't have, all you need to do is email you guys and look at getting the right person in your organization in contact with them so they could then do a translated one for that language. It sounds like you're really open to that. It's incredible. I have been aware of your organization since I started doing communities, not since I started doing the podcast, which was over 4 years ago, but since I started doing communities, because one of your board members was coming to my support community. And that's actually why this green one's in my hand, because one of the moms in my community latched onto the Peyton Heart Project and has been making hearts for you guys probably for 3 years now, since she met that board member. And I think about all the people she's had to have touched, because I've seen it. She's had you, just like you, piles of them, because she just crochets. And I'm actually going to get some in certain colors because I want to spread them all over the Caribbean, as many places, and then hope that they go beyond there, right? If the moms at my retreats take them home with them, then they get to spread them in all the communities near and wide that they go to. And this really can be a global movement of kindness, but that people matter. And so I'm so thankful. I'm thankful that you reached out just to share Peyton with me. If that was all we talked about, I would be so happy. Hearing about other people's children is still the biggest honor of what I do. And thank you for sharing just a little snapshot of who Peyton was, and then the bigger picture of what you're doing in his honor. It's his legacy that you're leaving out there in the world. Tell me a little bit as we close of what you want to leave everybody with today, David.
I just want people to know that if you've lost someone to suicide, they're not forgotten. That they left behind an impression on the world. And it may not seem like it, but there are people out there whose lives were touched by them. And just keep the faith. They did not die in vain. They were struggling. They didn't want to die. They just wanted that pain to end. And I know there are so many people out there that blame themselves. You are not to blame. You did everything you could. Well, and we beat ourselves up constantly. Just know that they're at peace now. So I've got a big old tattoo on the back of my calf that's from Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, and it says, "Everything is beautiful and nothing hurts." And that's what I want to think of, that they're not in pain anymore. And that there's some place where it's so much, the beauty is there. And that when my day comes and I'm called home,
Peyton will be the very first person there to greet you.
yeah.
Yeah. I know. Like you, I'm guessing you aren't necessarily doing anything to usher your life to an end sooner than its natural
No.
causes. However, I have switched my position in life. I, for many years, felt like every year that clicked by, I was getting farther away from Alex. And it feels like a positive move for me. I now look at every year as getting one step closer to him. And it isn't that I think that I'm closer to him as in I have less than 9 years. I'm not looking at it that way. But it really is about knowing that he is in a place of love and light and that the pain is gone and his earthly life is being celebrated and he made an impact and he made a mark and we're making sure he's remembered. And I now get to look forward to spending eternity with him someday. And I'm not a woman of God, but that doesn't mean I don't believe my son's not somewhere. He is. And I know that I will be reunited with him. And so just being able to switch that mindset from the one of almost negativity to one of positivity of someday we'll be together again.
Yeah.
And knowing that he'll be there right front and center brings more comfort than it does anything now and gives me something to work harder so that when I see him, I can say, we did good work, right? We did good work. I want him to be proud of the legacy I'm trying to leave for him. Good Lord, we never know when this is going to happen. I talk about this stuff all the time, and yet I still sometimes don't know when it's going to affect me, but it's just true. Thank you, David, for all of the hope that I know you have brought to people, for the incredibly brave, real talk that you've been willing to have with me, and for stepping forward as a father and shining that light for dads.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. And I said, any father out there, reach out to others. You are not alone. There's so many others that are going through very similar, if not the exact situation you are. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's not a fault of yours. That we have to admit that we need help. When they're ready, they'll talk. But let them know that you are available, that you want to help.
Yeah. And I think it's going to really matter to a lot of people, David. You have a great day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
So thank you for joining me today, Grievers. If today's episode resonated with you, please consider subscribing to get weekly updates when I drop new episodes. And please take a moment to rate and review the podcast with 5 stars, especially on Apple Podcasts. Your support helps so much because it's how others are able to find the podcast and this community. Remember, though it may feel impossible now, hope and healing are within reach. I invite you to connect further by visiting my website, theleftoverpieces.com, where you'll find support, legacy options, retreats, resources, online Zoom groups, and so much more. Together, we can navigate this journey of healing. We can put our hearts, our leftover pieces, back together. And as they say here in Puerto Rico, poco a poco, juntas podemos. Little by little, together we can. Take care and talk soon.